I hope we're all feeling emotionally and physically well
Yep.
Yeah.
today.
Yep.
Fantastic. And I'm B, as you know, so it's me B. And then we have another B, and then we have J, or I wouldn't say non, but I'll go J.
Nonyerem.
And I would say I would go out on a limb and say basically we are all educators, and we're all educators in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
People who work with young people or adults. Gosh, is it like that? This is what happens when we are all sharing the same space, isn't it? And we've got family all around us and stuff. So yeah, anyway. So no, I work mainly with adults. I also, in terms of a different context, in terms of looking at arts, marketing, training and development. But I also work with young people when it comes to literature. So I'm a poet and a writer, so I will find myself working with adults and young people in different environments in school and extracurricular to that as well. And I'm a parent, so I've spent many of my years finding quirky and creative ways to get the learning into my young people as well. B, would you like to introduce yourself in the context of your work with young people, or in terms of education?
Yeah, so I'm Beatrice. I'm currently a year 5 teacher. I'm going into my 5th year of teaching soon as well. And I've done a lot of volunteer work with children, so things to do with reading, play work. Yeah, I just enjoy working and educating children, to be honest.
Cool, excellent. And yourself, Jay?
Yeah, so call me Nonyerem. Yeah. No, so ultimately, I've always had an interest in teaching since leaving university. I went to Japan for a year to teach, even though I had an economics degree and I was going to go into banking. I really loved connecting with young people, and I've taught economics really ever since in secondary school, year 11, 12, 13. Yeah. So that's my background, just teaching in London, basically, for about 10 years.
So in terms of where I'd like to kind of kick it off, I'm really interested in the fact that we have, we're in, the coronavirus has hit the UK. We are in lockdown. A lot of us are in our houses. A lot of schools were shut 2 weeks before Easter. And now we have a situation in terms of trying to, I suppose, limit how the virus is going to affect the population. We've had to make sure that schools are shut, those educational institutions are shut, and the impact of one of the follow-on impacts of one of the and is a huge impact is the fact that people who were going to sit exams this year are not going to be sitting those exams. So so from my perspective, my eldest son is 15, was due to sit his GCSEs in the next couple of weeks, and that is not happening. And that's the same for colleges, that is the same for universities, and we go on in terms of primary, secondary, isn't it? B, in terms of primary schools, people are not, you're not doing the SATs either, right?
Yeah, so in primary schools, the year 2. Yeah, so the year 2s won't be doing their SATs, nor will the year 6s.
So we have this situation all around the country where there are a lot of young people, or a lot of people who are in a state of limbo, but definitely for people who are doing GCSEs, A-levels, those results will be delivered, presented to the young people by the educational boards and by the UK government in August. So we've been having updates that the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, has been providing since March at different intervals. Boris Johnson was the first person to announce that schools were going to shut. And ever since then, he himself and other people have been talking about, right, okay, then this is how it's going to go down. I'm interested from the perspective of this conversation. I'm interested to understand a little bit more about what that qualification is going to do for young people from your perspective, and whether that's important right now. And also, and there's another aspect to the conversation that we're going to dive into, which is about looking at biases that will come into place in terms of the divvying out of those qualifications. So, Non, from your perspective, as somebody who has worked in education establishments which are both formal and informal, how would you say that that teachers, what do you think teachers, can you describe, could you give me a sense of what teachers are going through right now? Because I just get the fact, I feel that some of them are like resting at home and they just have to just kind of like rock up and in the morning just to check whether some kids have handed in some perhaps some homeschooling, some work that they've presented down the line. And for the people who are GCSEs, they don't need to worry about them.
Yeah, I think with teachers right now, there's going to be a mixed response. I mean, I guess some will be taking the opportunity to, relax. I guess some will be more stressed out with the sort of uncertainty of not knowing when they'll be going back. Lots of my friends are having to prepare lessons, sort of kind of have their meetings and things like this. But I think the whole difficulty comes with the uncertainty. Like, in essence, I think we may be going back in September, because I see it very difficult to go back in June or July, because what could really be achieved at that point where there's not going to be any exams. So it's just that feeling of uncertainty where I think everyone's looking towards September, really. Okay, let's get this done, no matter how we do it, find a way, and then September regroup.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of the talk this week, from Friday to this week, has been about, we've had the extension to the middle of May, the official extension of lockdown, and therefore a lot of people are thinking, well, we need to get back to normality. B, what are you thinking in terms of your work? Because you're an active key worker, and how has it been in your position in terms of schools, in terms of what you've seen in teachers?
I think, yes, definitely there is a lot of uncertainty, and the thing is as well, not much is actually communicated to schools as well. So basically, most of the time, what everyone else is hearing is what the school's hearing as well at the same time. I would say that obviously for teachers, this is a very weird time, because they're composing all of this work and they're not sure if these children are actually doing it at home as well, and there's not so much teachers can do at the moment concerning that, because obviously it's up to the parents at home to make sure that their children are doing those pieces of work. We've had, on occasion, a few parents say to us that they're not necessarily going to have their children doing any work. And with us not knowing how long this is going to be, obviously that's going to have a huge impact on their learning and their levels when they do come back in September. Myself, I believe that school will return in September, because it's true, it wouldn't make any sense for it to come back, in June or July, because that's just not enough time. And what I think will be a lot as well when we do go back in September is that whole catch up of what the children have missed. And I think that'll be very interesting to see how it is in September, because I think it might be a very stressful time for teachers, especially those that are teaching year 6, because they're going to have to, those children will have to sit SATs. It's not like these current year 6s who don't have to do their SATs papers. These current year 5s that will be starting year 6 in September, there's a lot that they're going to have to do. And SATs in general is already a big thing in schools. So I do, in a sense, kind of feel sorry for those children that are going to come back in year 6 in September, because I feel like it'll be a big push basically for them and their learning. But yeah, it's just a very weird situation that we're in right now, and I don't think that anyone would have predicted something like this happening. And I feel like, in a sense, everyone's just trying to figure it out as they go along, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you do either of you get the sense that, in terms of this is the new normal, or there is no normal, and we've been trying to increase how people are picking things up at home? How do you think that there is, well, I suppose one of the things that we're looking at is the technology. Not everybody has got access to technology, and how is that going to, is this an opportunity therefore? Because you're saying the big catch up. Is this an opportunity? Nonyerem, you've been getting online, doing, online sessions and using your presence and your energy to be able to provide lessons online. Is that something that can be translated to the education system really easily as well? Yes, there has been, since kids came back after Easter, which was last week, the BBC has partnered with the government, and so has another educational organisation, I think it's Acorn, and they are providing digital learning, online learning combined with visual. How can we exploit this and just disrupt what has been a classroom-based learning environment?
I think it's by embracing technology like the mobile phone, for example, for students to be able to, I know they track their homework, there's certain apps where they can track their homework, and because everything is computer based in terms of research, typing up work and things like this. So I think it's about taking this opportunity to maybe allow syllabuses and lessons to be accessible so students can look at them anytime, but that not just being in one school, but that being a uniform thing where people are collaborating more. Because it doesn't make sense for there to be 15 different schools and 15 different teachers preparing a resource where we can collaborate and share things with a click of a button. So I think there should be more sort of kind of collaboration and sort of kind of working together. And so if something like this was to happen again, in essence, there'll be maybe less disruption, because we know, okay, this might be next or that might be next in terms of what to do, and things like this. Yeah.
B, you've been using, I suppose, creative work, as in practical creative work, and we've seen as well in terms of media companies, television companies, they've been showing a lot of people who are doing stuff in their homes and sharing that, whether it's online or on the news, on TV programs, people doing creative things, arts, exercise and everything. How do you think that the creative work that you've been doing as a key worker during lockdown is going to turn into something that can be digital, can be accessed by people online?
Well, I think
as part of the curriculum, actually, as part of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. I think what's good about the curriculum now is it does incorporate a lot of technology, because that is the time that we're in. So, in the school at the moment, we did a lot of computing where it required them using software, where children are designing things using computer. But then it's about whether these children can get it at home, because obviously not every child is privileged enough to have certain things at home, which is quite unfortunate. Yeah, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do. That's been one of the issues that have come up as well.
Yeah.
For when we're looking at socioeconomic deprivation, or just when you're just looking at the fact that actually not everybody has got a mobile phone, or has got more than one electronic device where they can communicate in this smart way as well. So how do we make it fair? Though I have noticed that the government is making, when I looked on gov.uk, they are making some bursaries available for schools to support people to buy equipment, and I think even asking the schools to buy the equipment and deliver it to some of the homes for people who are within a means tested environment in terms of so I don't know if it'll be part of the pupil premium in the future as well. Do you think that economically, do you think the country can take it?
Take what? Sorry,
all of these things can take it to go and make sure that every young person will have access digitally, because obviously there is a discrepancy in terms of who does and who does not have access, especially right now. Not everybody can access online these lessons or creative arts or even mindfulness information.
Yeah, there's always going to be some people that can't access the internet. It's like sometimes even in school where we do an online quiz, some people can't, they haven't got enough data, and there's always going to be cases like this. But I think in general, most households, like Wi-Fi access is as commonplace as water, like in a sense. Maybe some might say it's more important to have, okay, what's the Wi-Fi code? So I think it's the natural progression to have things organized in such a way that people can access things. There might have to be some sort of social distancing when it comes to learning. So it might be 3 days, 1 year group goes into the school, or 3 long days and 3 long days for another year group, and things might have to jigger around a little bit for social distancing. So I think it's that flexibility is probably going to be needed now. Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to explore is is how you see let's look specifically at the GCSE year, because that's my experience right now. And so when Gavin Williamson is talking about all the young people will get the grades that they deserve, and that the teachers will be the ones who will be assessing how they're going to get their GCSE grades. In looking at that, I'm a bit worried, because I'm wondering, well, my child's a Black British child. How are you going to be fair, not solely for my child, but because of the fact that I know of a lot of people across the 9 protected characteristics in terms of discrimination and equality? How are those young people, not just Black children, but also looking at whether it's disability, not just race, we're looking at gender, how can teachers be fair? So let me break that down a little bit. I suppose you will have in your classroom young people, some who are more disruptive than others. When teachers are assessed, when they're trying to manage the class, this is what I'm assuming, you both can correct me if I'm wrong. When you're trying to manage the class, you might get some misbehavior. And if that child is somebody who is, I feel that kids with melanin in their skin, they are seen first before they're seen by the Caucasian child. So that child will therefore be labeled, or they will be put down in terms of their results and their grades. I am interested in understanding how a teacher is going to assess a GCSE student if their attitude and behavior is going to bias and also is going to bias how they're going to get their just result.
Now, I think my point is there's something called behavior for learning, where it's very rare that I've seen a child that's not focused, maybe disruptive, achieve the top grades, if you like, because ultimately, like, there might be a reason for that behavior. And so ultimately, if I was a teacher, and it ultimately comes down to past performance and past marks, past papers and maybe given, and of course, the problem comes, I think, sometimes with the borderline, not with the A-star students and not with the E-grade students. I think it's the students in between. A student that might get a B grade and might get a D grade potentially, and the teacher might go for the D grade, might sort of kind of play it down a little bit. But when we go for the top and the bottom, I think they sort themselves out, because the students that are consistently working hard, they get the A. The students that are consistently misbehaving, they get an E or U, or I know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system now, so they get a level 1. So I really do believe it's the people in the middle that don't cause too much trouble, but don't sort of push themselves as well, that can get lost in there. I'm not sure what Beatrice thinks about that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is right. I understand what you're saying, that, you know, these teachers might grade these children personally on their behavior and stuff like that. But I feel like as a teacher, you have to put that aside. It's not about that child's behavior or whether you like that child or not, because, you know, you're, in a sense, you're the adult. So you kind of have to put that aside and really look at the child's academics. Like, do you think they're capable of achieving this mark, you know, regardless of, you know, how they've been in class. So I'm hoping, you know, these secondary school teachers, that's what they're looking at when they're, you know, going to be grading these children, and not necessarily looking at their behavior. I would hope as well that, as well as that teacher giving that grade, someone else has a look at it to see if it's fair what they've given, because then I guess that's, you know, that will help to eliminate anything like that from happening. Because if there's an outsider that looks at it as well, then they can be like, well, if they got this or that in the mocks, why have you given them this sort of grade? Do you get what I mean? Yeah, so it's very
That's
awkward.
interesting. Mm.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
There's a I suppose there's a pattern. Well, it's not even a pattern, but there's a train of thought that says that if you have got a young person who didn't work hard in the mocks in December or January, that they are going to, some of them are basically saying, actually, I was going to start working from February, March. So their grade that they're going to get, their mocks are not even going to reflect what they
would have got,
want to get, or are proclaiming that they would have got it come May next month. Therefore, there's a lot of parents who are worried. Well, the young people are worried. Therefore, the parents are worried for them as well, because they're not going to get into the colleges, the next stage in their lives, etc. Regarding these subjects, regarding what's going on in life as well. Is it, how fair can the system, how fair can the system be? Is it fair that we can? I
mean, I think that there has to be a decision, like we have to move forward in a way such as young people will not be going back to school until September, most probably. We couldn't maybe postpone that and say you take your exams in September. That might cause even more disruption in a sense. And so I think people might know that it's been a very tricky period. It's been a tricky period, and some might say that, okay, this is not the grade that I might have got, give or take. But in my time, what a teacher predicts, on average, it's always roughly the same or below, not above, generally speaking, in terms of predictions. I think generally speaking, a teacher, of course, there's some sort of estimation inside it, but I think it's very rare for teachers to get it so wrong that someone might jump up 2 grades. Yeah, it's very rare. Yeah.
With unconscious bias, is there are there opportunities where training or consultation can support what's going to go on? Because obviously once the teachers have assessed the grades and passed them on to the to the examination boards, whether it's AQA or whatever, then they will be moderated at that stage before being released back to the schools and the young people in August. But in terms of how between now and giving them to the moderating boards, what kind of opportunities do you see any issues? Because I feel scared for a lot of people who are trying to guess, well, my predicted grades from year 6 said this at this particular level, whether it's really, really high or very, very in the middle or low, so whatever that was. But I know that in year 11, September, by the time it comes to May, I was going to work hard. Even if I was going to start working hard in February, I was going to work hard, and now it's all scuppered.
What I find is that everyone has the plan. Like, everyone can say, I was going to, or this would not have been my grade. Of course, like, if your grade is a C grade, you are going to say that, right? Potentially. And maybe if your grades are a star grade, you're thinking, I wish I would have had the opportunity to prove myself, because it's just that sort of nature of things. But I think what's more important for young people right now is to see how the world is changing right in front of our eyes, and to see the people that are winning are the people that are able to run an online business or make products that are essential or have multiple streams of income, or people who are able to adapt and change to maybe a delivery service, or able to do an online yoga class and charge 20 quid a piece. So I think that's the biggest lesson from this, that the economy's changing, and okay, we can have our GCSEs and our A levels and degree, but unless that's linked to a skill, you're gonna be stuck. So I think having that sort of reflection and looking at where the world is moving, because how valuable is education these days? Of course,
that's
yes.
A question.
Yeah.
That's a question and a half.
Of course, yeah.
Definitely.
It's good for the social aspect and to learn communication and these sorts of things. But you don't have to go to university to be successful in the new economy, unless it's linked to something.
B, what are you thinking? Because you're working with people who are birthing themselves into the kind of like the education system. So for some of them, they may end up now coming out of lockdown, and they may never have to do something called GCSEs ever again, let alone go on to college and uni.
Yeah. I guess.
Do you think that schools have a place right now?
I think schools definitely have a place for children, because obviously it helps them with their social skills. However, yes, it's right. Education is not necessarily needed in order to make money. And it's so evident right now, with YouTube and Instagram and all of these things as well. I think it definitely teaches these children now not to have that mindset of, oh, I'm going to do this after this. Do you get what I mean? Where you was like, oh, I was working hard in December, I'm really going to push myself now. Like, it teaches you that you just basically have to push yourself at every point, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Like, none of us at all thought that this would get as serious as it has now, because I mean, this was still going on and schools were still open. People were still going to school. It took a very long time for them to decide to close schools. So I think it's definitely a learning curve for all of these children and parents as well, and teachers, because I just think everyone now needs to basically step up, because if you don't know what's going to happen next, why not just work hard now, so that at least whatever grade you got now and whatever grade they give you, it will still be good enough. And it's right, I don't think they will probably give you it 2 grades up, because that's just never done, to be honest. But I'm hoping they don't do 2 grades below as well.
Exactly.
And just if anything, just, you know, pass them at SC. That's still good enough, you know. And then hopefully, you know, if you're moving on to A levels, now that you had this experience, you'll have in your mindset now, okay, no, I need to do a lot better than I was doing before. Because to be honest, A levels going to be a lot harder than what they were doing in GCSE as well. So, you know.
Yeah, I heard it's a very, very big jump from GCSE to A level, but also I think in terms of skills-based training, there are lots of different free courses online I'm noticing, and I'm wondering whether in your experience you're hearing of young people taking this on at the moment.
Yeah, I am, like young people doing things like coding, young people doing things like drop shipping, where they get a product on eBay that is more expensive on Amazon, so they sell it on Amazon and then get it fulfilled by eBay. I guess there's so many different ways in which you can learn, and I'm sure in this time that we've all been skilling up. I know I've been skilling up in terms of online teaching. You know, I'll be doing quite a lot of that. I've got a workshop next week because there's opportunity. And I think at this time, rather than look at it as young people didn't get what they deserve, maybe looking at it like, ultimately, as Beatrice said, if you wait until the last minute, I guess things are more uncertain. Anything can happen, where generally speaking, if you're consistent throughout, it might be a lesson for some people that, okay, you know, this has happened, but maybe for my A levels, or maybe when I do my apprenticeship, I'm gonna, you know, do that, because I experienced that at school where I was doing very, very, very well in college, but I didn't revise early enough for my A levels. I didn't revise properly in terms of it wasn't structured enough. So I guess we have to learn. We have to learn at some point. And I think for a young person, nothing's fatal right now, in the sense of we should be building them up to say, okay, what's next? Because we all take blows, you know, but it's okay, how do we pivot and what's next?
Is there I just want to push this a little bit on the teachers and saying, right, okay then, in terms of people being concerned that their child is going to be negatively impacted by how the teacher has assessed the work and has passed that on to be moderated. Do you see that as an issue? Because obviously there are Black forums who are writing strong statements right now. We have people like the is it Runnymede Trust, who are an organisation, and they are looking at race in particular, and looking at how a lot of Black British young children are going to be negatively biased because they have not been seen as intelligent enough by their teachers, and therefore they'll be marked down. Or
I mean, from what I've seen in general, if there's a student, it doesn't matter if their name is Babatunde or Charlene Shaniqua, if they're working hard and producing the goods, like, that's a teacher's dream. Okay, I'll give you a grades, you know. I see what it comes to, maybe when it comes to stereotypes, and if you might be a bit bubbly, you might be seen as disruptive, or if you're in a group with other boys, you might be seen, and that comes from perception. Yes,
but it's also because the exam is just you and the paper in the room, whereas now we've got a teacher assessing it who may have some history with that child. Do you get me? There's a difference now, or am I wrong in thinking that way?
Yeah, I mean, no assessment is ever going to be 100% perfect in terms of, because you're right, it's someone's prediction. But generally speaking, it's okay if you're a C grade student, or generally maybe, okay, I like him, I'll push him to a B, or yeah, he's going to get a D. So yeah, those variances happen, but I think those variances might happen to white, black, Asian students that might be disruptive. So I think there's so many schools, so many young people. So I think to maybe look at it in terms of demographic, I think might be wrong, but in terms of the psychographic and the mindset of the young person that might be a bit rebellious, or or a bit anti-authority, or might not do well in an academic surrounding, that might be better in more practical surrounding, might be judged. But I think judgment happens to all for various reasons and stuff.
Yeah.
B, do you what would you say to your class if you were back with your full class right now? They open the school tomorrow, because obviously I don't feel they're going to open them tomorrow. I feel they'll open them in September. But yeah, if they were to open the school tomorrow, what advice, what messages would you be saying to your year 5 students?
I think I would bring up the discussion of how do they feel about school and education, and whether they think it's important, because as well, for most of these children, that's all they know. So this is very much different. They've got their parents that are teaching them, and not all parents as well know the new way of teaching, the new curriculum. There's different strategies now that's being used. So I think in a sense, these children might appreciate their teachers and the school more. They might also appreciate the whole structure that they have as well, with a school day. But I think I'll also have just a normal discussion about their mental health, about how they found the whole ordeal, what it has taught them as well. And then I'll probably advise them and say that, this is why it's so important for you to be focused, and it's important for you to listen. And this is why, for me as a teacher, I feel like I'm always kind of preaching to my children and kind of telling them, like, listen, there's a time and place. When we're in the classroom, that's when we need to really get stuck in, be focused. And as well, with me, if you're getting your work done, I don't necessarily mind if you're a bit silly here or there, but as long as you're producing the work that you're supposed to, that's fine with me. Do you know what I mean? And for a lot of these children that do misbehave as well, there's some that's really bright. So, for those children, those teachers can't say, oh, they don't deserve this grade, because they've, in a sense, got it already. So it's like, that's already there for them, but definitely that first day back in September, it's going to have to be like a circle time, where you're really discussing everything that the children have gone through as well, because as well, we don't know who may have lost their family members, or what kind of struggle that they face during this time as well. So yeah, it will be a lot of discussion, basically, not just like a simple assembly where we kind of discuss what's happened and move on from that. But I think a lot of teachers will have to have really, really good discussion with their children, so that they get a sense of how the children are doing as well. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, well, thank you both for joining me and talking to me and enlightening me on what's going on. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll catch you both another time. Thank you, Non. Thank you, B.
No problem.
Yeah,
thank you.
take it easy.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Thank
stay
you.
emotionally and physically well. Yeah,
You too.
Cheers.